and welcome everyone to another episode of the Face Your Ears podcast. I'm joined here with Rich Bozick. Rich, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today, thank you. It's a hot one here.
It is. You've still got your
Yes.
shirt on, but no sleeves, so it's most of a shirt.
Yes, I had to turn off the AC in the studio here, so it sounded better to the listeners, but luckily it's cool in here already, but we're going to heat it up by the end of this podcast.
Gonna heat it up. So, what's going on out there in the world?
Well, just working on some recording projects. I am teaching quite a bit.
Cool.
Also, having regular meetings and band practices happening weekly. Yeah, that's about it. How about you?
Cool. Working on some Depeche Mode covers with a friend of mine, and they're not done yet because I haven't finished them. So it's on me. It's not him. But yeah, we've got a handful of really cool Depeche Mode covers, irons in the fire, I guess, and hope to have those out soon, hopefully. And I've also got a new song I'm working on with a client, producing a new track. It's a mutual client of ours, so excited to be working with him again. And other than that, just making noise in the studio. So, yeah, going well.
That's excellent. I wanted to remind everyone you can check us out on Instagram at Face Your Ears Podcast. Come and check out our stuff on Instagram and, I don't know, like interact.
Yes.
We will interact back.
We will. If you leave us a comment, it will probably be one of the highlights of our year. And we will definitely write back to you. And we'll like your comment for sure. You can guarantee that we will like it.
Whoa. Within reason.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Yeah. You said things were going to heat up, and boy, are they. We've got a hot topic today. So today we're going to be just talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it relates to music. So this has been something that, since October, November, something like that, AI, artificial intelligence, has been blowing up predominantly with ChatGPT. So a lot of folks out there have probably heard of ChatGPT. And it basically is exploding at this exponential rate. And ChatGPT was really focused on text, generating text like stories and, even like business plans, really complex stuff. And so now the realm of music is being impacted by AI. And so we thought, we would unpack this a little bit and talk about it, some of our thoughts and opinions and some of the things we're seeing and hearing. So that is what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the first of many talks we're going to have about this. All of this has just, started. Pandora's box has been opened.
Yes.
And we're going to see a lot of changes happening. We're seeing it already. I mean, I'm noticing already people generating lyrics with AI. I'm noticing more and more kind of AI-based instrument generating things happening in software.
Yeah. In fact, you're not listening to Justin and Rich right now. This is AI that's actually talking to you. That's how advanced it's gotten. It knows our personalities. It can replicate our voice. It's staggering.
So any bad humor that you hear, that's just the AI hasn't, worked out the kinks.
Right, exactly.
The real Justin and Rich would get it right, but But anyways, let's dive into this a little bit. So why are we talking about AI and music? Like, why don't you prompt us here, start us off here.
I think that AI overall, I think I think if one word could describe AI, it's disruptive. I don't think that we can categorize it as positive or negative, but I think we can definitely categorize it as disruptive. And I see a lot of positive stuff happening with AI myself. And, one of the things I think AI is doing really well is enhancing creativity. So, um, musicians like myself, who aren't very good drummers, for example, can leverage a tool like Logic Pro Drummer, which is effectively built off of AI. And so I can audition different drum kits, different, drummer styles with just the click of a mouse. And in years past, I may have used drum loops and things like that, but this is a much more kind of organic sounding drum sound. And that's a very simple example, but I think what's great about it in a positive light is that it is enhancing creativity. And, we're also seeing things like the streamlining of production. And this is one of those really disruptive things, and that is a little controversial, but uh, pretty soon, well, I shouldn't say pretty soon, it's actually happening now. You can upload your audio to an AI powered tool that will mix and master your music.
That's right.
And so that is it's up for debate, right, as to how good it sounds and so on and so forth. But it's fascinating that Rich. We talked a while back about back in our day, cue the Wayback music, but like we thought it was like the most powerful thing to have that 4-track recorder. Using a pillow to sort of filter the frequencies and whatnot. But we thought that was so advanced and so cool to have that kind of a tool at our disposal. And did it create the greatest, studio quality sound? Of course not. But it was ours, and it got us excited. We were able to capture our ideas in the moment. And now here we are 20 plus years later, and some kid in his bedroom can not only record almost infinite number of tracks with all these amazing instruments and sounds, but now he can get it mixed and mastered without really having to know much or do much or have a ton of money. And so it really is enabling musicians to not just create really cool music, but actually like a finished, polished product. And again, it's probably not going to be something that competes with like some studio in LA that's been around for 50 years. I get that, but it's a really powerful tool. So yeah, I think just want to mention a couple other positive things I see going on in the realm of AI. So of course, personalized recommendations is something we all live with every single day. Like you open up Apple Music, you open up Spotify, and you're using a tool that learns your preferences for music and can create those personalized recommendations, introducing people to new artists, new songs, and even genres that they may have not, come across before. And so I think that AI is helping to sort of cross pollinate, if you will, and sort of get us out of our everyday sort of listening habits.
Yeah.
S-
I think I have been way more kind of pessimistic about AI,
yeah,
to be
because
honest.
I mean, I wanted to start off on a positive note because trust me, this coin has two sides.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think there are some positive things about it. But yeah, what's your hot take? What are some of the things you're concerned about? Or
Well, I get what you're saying with the tools such as Logic Drummer. That's amazing.
mm-hmm.
It's just amazing what you could do with that. You play a riff and Logic Drummer will generate something that follows it and even adjusts timing
Right? Yeah.
wise with it. And it's like having a human being getting in there and listening and making the adjustments. So if not better sometimes. I mean, I haven't talked to too many drummers about what they thought about that yet, but it might be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
The things that have caught my attention with AI recently on the music front, though, I think it was a few weeks back, a not a month or two ago, there was a track released that was a collaboration, well, in quotes, collaboration between The Weeknd and Kanye West, I think. And it was an AI generated track that used their voices, and someone released it on Spotify. I can't remember like in what context, if it was a test or if it was like intentional or what, but like it generated a lot of listens and people were curious, and maybe even some people were fooled and thought, yes, here's a new song by these artists. So that was kind of like, that caught my attention. That was like, that got me to ask a bunch of questions. One of them being, what is that going to do with, like, all right, if you have a lot of people who are into a certain artist, like let's say there's a bunch of people who love Taylor Swift right now.
Right.
And one day Taylor Swift will stop making music. Will she?
Yeah.
Will people
Will she?
still? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Will people be using the sound of her voice to keep generating more music? Like, what I'm wondering is, are vocals the next on the chopping block with regard to, like when you buy your plug-in package? Like, can you buy the like 90s rock vocalist plug-in package where you can have all your top 90s vocalists in that package, where people have come up with their own like plug-in where you could sing, but then you could put in that plug-in over your voice to make it sound like Eddie Vedder or whatever.
That actually exists. I was reading about this. There is something akin to that where you can buy. Oh, I don't know if it's for sale yet or not, but of course it will be, right? Like, that's sort of the name of the game with all of this stuff, is monetization, right? So we live in a capitalistic society, so this stuff ain't going to be free for for long. But yeah, it was more or less what you're describing, which was like being able to have a computer generate a different kind of a voice. And so one of the pitches, if you will, for this product was for gamers, using it on things like League of Legends or Fortnite, stuff like that, where you could
like, how so?
like,
Did you look into
yeah,
it?
you could have like you could create sort of like taunts and stuff like that, like little sound clips using a different voice through AI. So and it could be like a celebrity's voice or like a cartoon character's voice or
Oh.
something like that. And so that way it would sort of hide your voice, but you'd be able to come up and say something, and I don't know, some sort of what's a fun pop culture character? I don't know.
Jar Jar Binks.
Sure, you could taunt your Fortnite people you're playing against as Jar Jar Binks if you wanted, or Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like,
I think our references are too
I know,
outdated.
I know, but the idea is still there, where it's like you with AI you can do that effectively, is leverage someone's voice that is not your own via a computer.
Yeah, see, that's like, just crazy to me. It's crazy. Am I the guy who was like the wagon wheel maker who's like, no, don't switch to cars, stick with wagons, like, because I'm worried about like being made obsolete. I mean, everything changes, right?
Yeah.
Everything changes. I mean, there'll always be people, I guess, making music and doing music, but I wonder, like, I'm worried about new artists, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because already, I think on Spotify and most of the streaming platforms, the lion's share of listening is older music.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what happens when an artist that, like for example, the Beatles, like the Beatles are so huge still. They've been around for a long time and they're still so huge. How long will it keep going if we could just keep generating AI, new Beatles songs coming out, new albums coming out in perpetuity? Like, is that wrong? Or, I mean, it's like almost like creating like a monopoly on music,
Yeah.
new music coming out.
I think for me there's a bigger sort of I think I have a bigger existential concern, which is like, why would anyone create new music? Like it's going to get to that point very, very soon where you can just type in a description of what you want and the computer can generate it for you.
Yeah.
So I was watching a YouTube video where someone was sort of demonstrating this idea where it was a text prompt where, they would describe the the music they wanted, like fanfare, brass music, dramatic, blah blah blah, and they just described it, and the AI engine was able to create pretty high quality music doing that. And it's doing that in 2023 when all of this stuff is like bleeding edge. Like,
Yeah. It's only going to get better.
what's going to happen in like 10, 20, 30 years? It boggles the mind. And I think that people. My opinion is people are always going to make music because I think you're always going to have people that do make music just because there is an emotional, soulful, connection to that process. But I wonder. This may sound weird, but like I wonder if it will be something more akin to like hunting, where it's a very niche thing that a very small number of people do.
Yes.
And it's like the kind of thing nowadays where it's like, yeah, you can go and hunt, but like 99.9999% of the population is going to go to the grocery store, if they want, some meat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's like an evolution. To piggyback on what you were saying, I remember watching this interview with Steve Albini. He's the legendary producer of the Nirvana album, I think In Utero.
oh yeah, yeah, he did In Utero.
And other bands. But the guy is pretty smart, and he was being interviewed, and he thought that music is going to go the way of like kind of almost a leisure time activity, that it's going to be something that people will just do on their own. And the idea of like a big star or whatever is not going to be a thing forever. And I'm wondering if this AI stuff is what's going to bring that to life.
Yeah.
Because you could sit at home and not have to leave your house to generate music you want to hear the way you want it done. There's no barrier to entry. You don't have to know how to play an instrument. All you have to do is describe what you want to hear.
Right.
And if it's not quite what you want, maybe you could put in another descriptor and refine it a little bit.
Right. Like I want a folk version of Enter Sandman with me on vocals, right? Like I could put
Yeah.
that into a computer and it could spit it out for me, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's wild. Like on the same token, related but not exactly with music, but there's a lot of talk about people just putting in a prompt of saying, I want to see myself in a romantic comedy with this particular actress and have it be about X, Y, and Z. And AI would be able to generate a movie with you and that actor in a movie together, like within probably seconds or minutes or whatever. But it's like, that is the scope of AI. It's like, we don't even know where it's going, but like,
Yeah.
it's so disruptive. It's wild.
Yeah, we're at a weird transitionary point. I wonder if one day people will look back and be like, "Oh, wow, those people used to like record their own music."
Right.
And they'll look at it as like, that's ridiculous. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, so archaic. They would actually handle
It's like the way we look at like classical music, or they used to like handwrite this stuff on paper. And
oh yeah. It seems so archaic now.
well, record labels and things like that are like kind of, I mean, I could imagine they're freaked out a little bit because this product will eventually just become open to everyone. And how will they handle intellectual property?
Right.
And like if we, like, let's say like whoever owns Michael Jackson's catalog now, are there going to be lawsuits like if people start using Michael Jackson's voice to create their own songs?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to definitely create complexity around copyright and ownership issues because, to your point earlier, you brought up that story about The Weeknd and whoever else singing that song. It's like, who owns that song, right? Like a computer is just mimicking how they sound and interpreting that, but it's like, who decides that, right? Like, how can a judge say, yes, that is the weekend, and he has rights to it? It's like, does he? I don't know. Like, that's a really complex uh, argument to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Um, be-
I mean, we went through that. We kind of lived through that with sampling,
yeah,
and now it's like a whole new level of like sampling.
yeah, yeah. It. I mean, God, years ago, I never would have imagined stuff like this would be possible, and that a computer could generate an artist's voice and replicate it, reasonably well, and create music almost out of nothing. It's pretty nuts. And I think, like most industries, job displacement is a big concern too, because, like I mentioned before, hey, it's cool that like you can mix and master, but it's like not quite on par with a major studio or mastering engineer, etc. Not yet, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, and all of that is a subjective kind of thing.
yeah. Well, even mastering engineer to mastering engineer, like one artist may prefer one engineer over another, and so in the future it might be, hey, I prefer this AI engine over this one to master. Who knows? It's really crazy. Like even like session musicians, right? Like who play a particular instrument, a guitar, even a vocalist, keyboard player. If you have something like AI, there's almost no need to. Well, it becomes not that there isn't a need. There's always a need, I guess, depending on circumstances. But it just becomes that much easier. The barrier to entry to have a guitar solo, keyboard solo, whatever,
That sounds reasonably good.
right? That sounds reasonably
And
good. Becomes
and
easier.
remember, all of that is subject to the user or the person creating the song, like whether they feel, yeah, this is good enough.
Yeah.
The standards of the user and the audience.
Right.
So, like, what I've noticed is when we were growing up, I remember when Milli Vanilli got busted lip syncing. Do you remember that?
I do. I listened to a podcast about it actually recently, and it's actually a pretty awful story. Those guys got bamboozled, man. They got drawn in by this horrible record producer that basically threw them under the bus, and so it was a whole crazy story. But anyways, stuff you should know. I'll cross promote. That's a great podcast. It was on there. Check it out.
The short of it, though, is like Milli Vanilli was caught lip syncing. They won. Meanwhile, they won a Grammy for the song or album, whatever that they were on, and everyone freaked out. They were forced to return their Grammy. One of the guys actually ended up killing himself. The other guy is spending the rest of his life trying to like learn to sing well so he could prove I could really sing. But anyways, back then people freaked out. Now it's commonplace for people to lip sync live, and the younger generation, the newer generation doesn't care. They don't bat an eye. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm getting at is you and I are talking about AI and looking at it as like, is this going to be problematic, and what is this going to do to the way we do things? But I wonder, and I'm thinking maybe the younger generation, the even younger generation, to them it's not going to matter. They're just going to be used to this new way of doing things, and it's just easier to just put in your prompts and make your songs, or to like just have the AI generate that guitar solo. Why would you spend that extra money to hire a guitarist? They don't know any better. Like, they don't care.
Or spend those extra hours learning to play guitar, right?
Yeah.
And I think what this gets at, again, bigger existential stuff, is the shifting of values. You and I value musicianship and hard work and musicality and creativity and being hands-on, like all these things. Like, we value these things, and over time, as tools and norms evolve and change, the values that people have shift as well. So we see it with our technology, with iPhones and iPads and stuff that, you know, people seem to be valuing face to face interactions less and, you know, embracing this piece of silicone in front of their face more. And that becomes the norm because you just described it. People start to come up in it, and it isn't new to them. It just is. Like it's the de facto standard for them. And so yeah, we're gonna have generations very soon. People being born today, or in recent years, are gonna grow up with this stuff, and it's gonna be the norm for them.
Yeah.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is.
I think what boggles my mind about AI. I was listening to another podcast, actually yesterday, called Unexplainable, and they were talking about AI. And one of the things they were getting into, well, the central sort of topic of the podcast, which I thought was really fascinating, was the fact that even AI scientists don't necessarily know or understand how AI works. Like they call it the black box. And so the problem that creates is it's unpredictable. You can't predict what the AI is going to do. And so because it can kind of self-regulate and self-learn and come up with different ways of generating something. I don't know. Like, how do you think that would impact music? Like the fact that like somebody could put something into a computer and nobody knows how that happened, like how that song or melody or whatever came to be, and they just got it. Like what I was thinking about that, and I was like, what would be the impact of something like what's the impact of that concept on music? Because this has been a long-standing concern about AI is that this black box concept, which is nobody can like peek under the hood to see how the AI is doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's a very sci-fi kind of thing, but what do you think?
For the average people, it's going to be just like everything else that we use that's complicated and beyond our realm of like being able to just be like, oh, I know how this works. Like your phone, for example, there's a lot of parts on there. We know there's electronics and whatnot, but how does all that work together? That's already complicated enough. And to like have the average person be like, well, how does this AI think of this answer? They might ask the question, but I think they'll quickly just be like, all right, it doesn't matter. I'll just use it. People are in the stage of where it's like just another tool right now. And there are a lot of things like that.
It makes me think about nuance. Like it makes me think about nuance for sure. So like we might hear something and interpret it based on our understanding of harmony or melody and be able to articulate what it is about that thing that we like. And so in a way we're able to kind of pick apart something based off of knowledge and experience. And I think that's my kind of concern is like how it might impact creativity because I see it with iPhone that yes, it is very complex. And the assumption would be like, oh, young kids growing up today with iPhone, like they know how everything on there works. They basically were born with one in their hand. And I've actually come to find out it's actually the opposite.
I think I see what you're getting
That
at.
like they only know how to use TikTok and come up with all these cool things and whatever, but ask them to run a software update or create a folder, basic simple stuff, and they're stumped.
Interesting.
And so it's like it's sort of the forest for the trees kind of situation. Like they're not. That's my concern is that people will not be able to infuse humanity into music, and I think that's perhaps this might be grandiose, but like I'm concerned that AI will decrease the amount of humanity, because like music is part of the humanities, right? Like art, sculpture, painting, all of that stuff. So I don't know. That's
Well, if you look at ChatGPT or there's a few other ones that I've used that generate images.
yeah,
Where you put in some prompts and you get some weird image based on all the combinations of things. I use it with the kids all the time. Like I ask them like, tell me like 3 weird things, whatever, and I'll like combine them and they'll like laugh, and I love it. Right. Basically, the images that I'm seeing on this AI are a conglomeration of other things put together. So I'm wondering if all the music that will be generated with that is nothing more than just a conglomeration of everything that's happened up till now.
yep, yep,
And so, I mean, but then that could be like, okay, well, that is that, and it's always been that, but now it's just faster and more vast and more like you could combine, things that are very different.
right.
In a quicker way and get a quicker result. I mean, it's always been that way, I guess. Every artist has had their influence from things
Yeah.
before them.
Yep.
And will that generate new art that is like, this is like like AI music now is this new genre that's out, and that's what people are into, and that will eventually blossom into something else.
To me, there's a fundamental problem, though, in that our brains were built to consume things at a particular rate that is incredibly dwarfed by AI's ability to generate content, right? So, like, our gulp rate, if you will, of new stuff, music, movies, books, whatever, is basically based off of our ancestors' brain. Our brains are at a point, or have been evolved to a point, where we can only consume so much, right? And AI can generate content at a rate that is unfathomable. And so
Yeah.
that is hard to wrap my head around, that an AI could create content so quickly at such a rate and such a depth that it would be like this ocean, of content generated in no time.
Yeah.
And it,
I really think that with that idea that, I mean, once people could do it on their own, I mean, I think it's done for. People will, there's no need to go elsewhere for it.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because, you were saying how AI is more or less, and you're right, AI today, more or less, is just taking our existing knowledge and sort of creating an amalgamation, just sort of putting it together. I mean, that's kind of what ChatGPT is doing. Is it's predictive. It's sort of scouring a ton of data and predicting what word should follow this word and what sentence should follow this sentence, and that's based off of our knowledge. But I think what we're starting to sort of insinuate is a higher level of real intelligence, where AI comes up with its own, I don't know, consciousness. Cue the Terminator music. And, it comes up with its own way of thinking that isn't based off of pre-existing data that it was fed. I mean, that's a crazy thought. I mean, that's basically consciousness, right? To come up with original ways of thinking or creating or coming up with music or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And, we're not there today in 2023. But I mean, it's not a far cry to think we'll be there soon.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Maybe this can ground us a little bit here. Now you're talking like consciousness, AI consciousness and stuff. I gotta calm things down. Bring it back down. Bring it back down a little bit.
Yeah, it's an
Calm
intense.
down here.
That's getting up there in the clouds a little bit.
Like now, today, musicians today, what should we be doing? Should we be carrying on with what we're doing? I mean, I'm assuming we should be carrying on with what we're doing. Should we be worried about this stuff, or should we embrace it and try to incorporate it into what we're doing? I mean, I played with Logic Drummer. I really like it. It's fun playing with a real drummer, but also when you have Logic Drummer, you can make all of your creative ideas come to life without that barrier of having to actually meet with someone, and you can, get a good result pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that people, I mean, here's the thing. AI is absolutely not going anywhere. Like it's here, and you can't put the toothpaste, yes, back in the tube. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it is an incredibly powerful tool that is only going to continue to evolve and grow. And so I think the best thing a musician can do is, continue to learn about AI as a tool. I mean, how can AI, complement the work that you're doing as a musician? How can it fit in? What is that looking like? Because that industry, the whole industry is being disrupted. I mean, the whole world is being disrupted, not just the music industry. And I think, too, that musicians should continue to do what musicians have done for millennia. Practice, learn, collaborate, study, do all the things that make a musician great. Because I think that framework is invaluable in creating new and interesting music. Without that sort of knowledge and expertise, it makes it really hard for you to, I think, stand out. And the AI is just a tool at this point. I mean, maybe next year it'll be living with us, but no, I just think that having musical knowledge and skill is critical, because it will inform how you use that tool. It will inform the decisions that you make as a musician.
Yeah. My thought is we can't lose ourselves. We can't lose our sense of humanity, and we can't lose our sense of having purpose in our own lives and a sense of fulfillment and learning and achievement and interest and curiosity. So even though those tools exist, I still think we need to embrace, having things in our lives that give us purpose and a sense of like being able to be part of something and have our hands in it and being able to make it ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about being a part of a community, right? So I think musicians, all of us, regardless of genre or instrument, I think it's a global community. And I think that instills a sense of purpose, a sense of agency in your life. And, I think the humanity question is the biggest question around AI, and that becomes very pronounced when you start talking about music or any sort of art, for that matter. So, but yeah, I think there's so much more to unpack. I think we've barely scratched the surface, and I think that, as things unfold on the landscape of AI in regards to music and production, we'll have more to talk about. So
we will definitely talk about this again, I have a feeling.
Yes.
But anyways.
Yeah. I think this episode was really intended to get the topic out on the table, and there's going to be a lot more to talk about in the future. So I think with that, we'll wrap things up for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you on Instagram. Make sure to leave that comment, like, subscribe, do all those things that you do. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Face Your Ears podcast. We hope you found it entertaining and informative. Check us out on social media and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. For more information related to our podcast, head on over to www.faceyourears.com. Links can be found in the show description. And remember, whether you're a musician just starting out or a seasoned professional looking to talk shop, it's time to face your ears.